This is the reason why I said, Nsiki, please do not join MK party, because you are really going to be disappointed. Because I think for many of us who rejected the ANC, who rejected Ramaphosa at the time, we were just looking for an alternative, and I think it's the mistake that many of us continue to make. MK for me will die a natural death. MK will die with Zuma, and we are going to see a brutal battle for the soul of MK. President Zuma has always accused people of being spies. He's always accused now he's accused Ramaphosa of being sent by, white monopoly capital. But he worked with Ramaphosa from 2010. So as and when it suits him, uzokhuluma. MK does not have any ideological posture. MK stands for everything and nothing at the same time.
In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or position of this channel, its hosts, or affiliates. This podcast is a platform for open discussions and exploration of various perspectives, including controversial and unconventional ideas. We encourage viewers to think critically, do their own research, and form their own opinions. The content is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as fact, advice, or an endorsement of any specific viewpoint. Viewers' discretion is advised. Umoya Ulight, Umoya Ubright. Welcome to another episode of MOYA Political Series, where we're going to give you the education that you're not going to get at the white schools. Thank you to everybody who is supporting the channel. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Most especially, thank you to the members who are helping us keep the lights on. As you can see in the comment section, the other people I just react to. But the members, I'm like, hi, sweetie, how's it? You're part of family, so we really, really appreciate you. So, another day, South Africa keeps changing, guys. Very dynamic space. A lot has been going on. So I just thought I should bring in one of, it's so ironic because, as much as South Africans don't acknowledge the power of women in politics, it is the women who are giving their opinions. It is the women giving direction. It is the women who know what the hell's going on. So we've got another political commentator, strategist in the house, researcher, PHAPANO PHASHA. We always have you, friend of MOYA. So thank you again for coming every time we invite you. So, Paps, you can be quite tricky, quite triggering. You know all of this. You can say all the things that nobody really wants to hear. A lot is going on politically. Initially, you were part of the MK groups.
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were.
But not an MK member.
Interesting.
Yes.
So now, as the people who have been following this MK journey and now it is where it is, can you take us through how it got to where it is right now? And from the beginning, maybe the things that we didn't understand. I remember I was still trying to platform MK and you were like, girl, it's a Zuma party.
I told you from the beginning.
I know, no, you did. You did.
Even when I was helping them, I was like,
it's a Zuma party.
It's a Zuma party.
So now it took us, some of us a bit longer, some of us were in denial, some of us, but now we're like, okay, no. So take us from the beginning, how you saw, Guti, this is not going to work, and where do you think it's going now?
No, thank you so much. And I'm just glad that everything that I said in the beginning is coming to pass. Because for me, there's really no sensible person who can really join or lead MK party. Of course, you can lead from the side, or you can contribute from the side. Like for someone like me who has been working over the years, of course, with the ANC, but mainly with progressive black parties and black organizations, I thought that MK would be that one party that helps the ANC, and I think I was out of my mind because I had just resigned from the ANC. So it was quite easy for me to go and assist, MK Party, because the people who formed MK Party, and I think we were having this conversation, the fact that, of course, President Zuma hijacked MK Party, and...
What do you mean he hijacked it?
Well, MK Party is not a Nkamulo Ndlela party, a Duduzile party, or a President or Jacob Zuma party. MK was formed in Johannesburg, MK Party was formed by former leaders of MKMVA. Your Gorbachev, your Mogojo, who's the deputy chair, who's still there in MK Party, your Shirley Brown, and a few other people who were working in Esma Khashula's office, like Muzi and Jingila, who went on to become the head of elections in MK Party, McDonald, who was the chief of staff or working very closely with Esma Khashula. That's why on December 16, the first anniversary of MK Party was in Johannesburg. It was not by coincidence that it was in Johannesburg. It was initially meant to be in Ipelecheng, in Soweto, which was the birthplace of what we used to call, the headquarters of RET, or Radical Economic Transformation. So that's why the first ever, sort of like culmination of MK Party was in Johannesburg, primarily because you had former leaders of MKMVA who had gone to President Zuma and said, they were highly despondent. These were people who took over MKMVA when the ANC at the time. Remember, there was a time when the ANC did not really acknowledge MKMVA, or those who fought in the trenches. They would always go and protest outside of Luthuli House. So you had a few leaders in the ANC who recognized MKMVA, but there were people who carried the baton of MKMVA. People like Van Rooyen, who's still with MKMVA, with MK Party. People like Chris Kalnehouse, apologies, the late KB Mapatwe. So you had people who really continued with the legacy of MKMVA, even though the ANC elite distanced itself from MKMVA. So if you recall, with the suspension of ACE or the expulsion of ACE, isolation of Zuma, there was the Eastern Cape Conference where Snooki Zigalala won. That's how you now have MKMVA League or something to that effect within the ANC. So many people who lost at that conference, and of course that conference was rigged, who lost in that conference, they then went to President Zuma, whom they saw as their commander-in-chief, because during his tenure, he took many of them and deployed them into, various positions. That's why, again, you see Van Rooyen and others are part of MK. So they went to President Zuma, and of course, I'm sure other people had gone to JZ and engaged JZ. But they went to JZ and they said to him, and they were clear that they were not prepared to join Act of Esma Khashula, but they want to continue with MK and someone who appreciated the legacy of MK. And that's how MK was formed. And I will also say this, even before MK was formed, I got a call from McDonald, who has now been isolated, Muzi, because they said, oh, we are in the process, we're engaging with JZ, we want you to be part of, this organization, and I refused because I just left the ANC. So it did not make sense for me to then jump into to another party. Of course, they registered MK, and President Zuma used Khumalo as his proxy, and so Khumalo...
Maybe you need to explain that, actually, because Khumalo's going around saying that Jay-Z stole the party from him, and he's saying that they had the concept of the party, it was their party, then they were consulting with Jay-Z, and then Jay-Z said to them, oh, actually, you know what, let's name this Mkondo Wesizwe because it's got more power. But he actually owned it. So
No. Khumalo was just a proxy for Zuma. That's why some of the key people, as I said, I mean, if you look at the first acting SG of MK, It was Gorbachev. And Gorbachev is the former secretary of MKMVA in Johannesburg. The former acting chair, or the first acting chair of MK, it was Mukojo, as I said, who was then the chair, and now it's been relegated to a deputy chair. So that's how MK, MVA, and the phenomenon that is Jacob Zuma emerged to form what you have MK party today. But now let me tell you, and this is the reason why I said, Nsiki, please do not join MK party, because you are really going to be disappointed. Because I think for many of us who rejected the ANC, who rejected Ramaphosa at the time, we were just looking for an alternative, and I think it's the mistake that many of us continue to make, because we hope, you know, there's that possibility of going from one political party to the other because you're looking for a savior. So I took a personal decision that I'm not going to join any other party post the ANC, but of course I could help MK. So you would remember I introduced Khumalo to you so that he can come and shoot. Even Luther Lebelo, who was the convener of MK in Gauteng, but I've just seen that he has joined Floyd Tshivambu. He's now with...
We're going to get there.
Yes. So now, here's my issue with MK. Now, they request that I must develop a war room strategy for them. And then they invite me to a meeting, because I was not part of it. I refused to, to be part of MK. But as I said, okay, I can assist with communication because I am competent and, a sought-out election political strategist. So now I decide to go and meet up with the leadership, the NIC, the interim committee, the National Interim Committee of MK. Guess what? The meeting is supposed to be 12 o'clock, but they continue saying, no. Please come around 2 o'clock, come around 3 o'clock. Ultimately, around 4, I'm told to come. When I get there, all these men, it's only men, the only female who's there is Commander Shelley Brown, who was part of the leadership of MKMVA, who was in the NEC of MKMVA. In fact, Shelley Brown was the first president of MK Women's League. She was removed, by the way. She was just removed. And Shelley Brown, if you look at, past videos of President Zuma when he's in court, Shelley Brown is this woman who's always standing next to President Zuma, So she was a member of MK, went to the trenches, but now she's been removed and discarded, like everyone who went in to MK. So I go there, we are in Hyde Park. And I'm told this is Duduzile's home. The meeting, we are waiting for Duduzile to come, to fly from the airport. We are waiting for her, she's running late. The meeting was supposed to start at 12. All these men outside of Duduzile's house, they can't start a meeting, they're waiting for her. We all go into her house. She says nothing. She can't speak. She's not a politician. She doesn't understand the political lingo, political jargon. She's just sitting there, and there's a meeting of the NIC and some of the people, And I just realized that I cannot be part of this. And that's what I told Khumalo, that unfortunately, based on my, political grooming, as a child of the ANC, actually, and spending many years in politics being groomed, I cannot report to a child of a leader by virtue of being a child. Politics, unfortunately, is not sexually transmitted. But these men were just sitting there. Dudu was there. She agrees. She doesn't, she doesn't agree. But she's the final decision maker. And I just knew that I could not be part of this thing. And I explained to them that, look, I would assist, but I'm not going to be part of this. And consistently so, I used to tell Khumalo that what President Zuma was doing, relegating men and women, seasoned men and women, to bystanders, it was for me uncalled for. It was just unprincipled. And for me, it really showed that what President Zuma was actually doing, he was just building a lager for his children. This is a legacy machine for his children, so that when he passes on, his children would have something to stand on. And if there are court cases, they'd be able to use MK to defend themselves, but at the same time to benefit from patronage. Because people must understand that the majority of people also who went into MK, there are people who were very powerful during Jay's tenure, but now they are weak. They don't have access to state power. They are not influential, But then they have an opportunity. 2026 is around the corner. So these people have an opportunity to win municipalities. They've got an opportunity to control municipalities. And no one knows how to control municipalities like Floyd Tshivambu. So for me, I think with MK, it was just a disaster waiting to happen. For me, an unprincipled disaster, because people who went, and especially all these MKMVA leaders who went to President Zuma, they went there because they saw him as a father figure. Because, of course, the NEC had taken a decision that they're not going to work with a section of MKMVA. They're going to work with Snooki, who did not even care about MK. Remember, Snooki is just an elitist. He did not care about MK, but he came on and managed to take over. So all these people who went to JZ, they went to JZ as a father figure, as someone who could listen to them, because they felt isolated in the ANC. And I think for many of them, they were just highly, highly despondent because the ANC itself did not actually recognize them. So for them now to go into MK, and I remember Shelley Brown, I wish that you can interview her. The first thing that she said to me was that I was jealous of Dude. When I raised this point, she said I was jealous of Dude. And I said to her, look, you know me quite well. I'll tell you this, Nziki. I mean, I used to take them to court cases. I would hire a Viano, I would hire an H1 so that we can go to President Zuma's court cases. Then, as and when after the court case, I would just sit in the car. When all of them, they go and take pictures, I would just sit in the car because, I'm raised different. I'm from Soweto, I'm not...
Celebrity struck.
Yes, I'm not celebrity struck. So, of course, I would have 1 or 2 pictures with JZ. But in the many instances that I was with all of them, I would just sit and they would just go there, ubaba. And also because I'm from Soweto, this idea of, bowing down to someone, it's like a cult to me. It hasn't made sense because I believe that leadership must be earned. So, of course, Ntlamulo is there. Ntlamulo is extremely powerful. Ntlamulo has always wanted to take over from President Zuma. And I think the mistake that other people make when they go into MK, they position themselves. And Ntlamulo, of course, he's got no political background. He's the nephew to Tom Moyane. He used to be a business person. He used to be involved in tenders. He used to do business with SARS when Tom Moyane was at SARS. And he was lucky that December 16, he found himself in Johannesburg. And because he could speak good English, they gave him an opportunity to be an MC. And from then on, and also because of his father, John Lela, I think he's the organizer of MK. That's how, he was able to get this position. So Ntlamulo has his father in MK. He's got his uncle who is behind. And for me, how do because I used to prepare notes for Ntlamulo. And it did not make sense for me to also report to Ntlamulo. But I must say that from a cordial perspective, Ntlamulo was extremely nice.
He's a very nice man.
Extremely nice. He was saying, there are positions, there are no women in MK. I think, you can fit quite well. And I just refused. It did not make sense to me again because it's not a constitutional organization. He's a nice person, I must say. Yes, but he's not qualified.
Yeah.
He's there by virtue of proximity and by virtue of his family. And that's why MK is in this crisis. Yeah. And this crisis, it will continue because people who are within MK, especially in the leadership structure, it's as if they do not see this. But because most of them are opportunistic, some of them are, career politicians, some of them are bandla, they've got absolutely nothing to do. They've never been to parliament. They tried to contest in the ANC. They did not make it. So MK has given them an opportunity, to express themselves. But everyone tolerates Tutu because umntwana kababa. I mean, imagine adults like ourselves having to, dampen down for Ututu by virtue of his father. No one can say anything in MK. She's allowed, to be wayward. She's allowed to say whatever she wants. I mean, I was saying that for me, I think also one thing that was very, very damning to me was the fact that when she went to court for the July unrest tweets, MK sent, an entourage to go and support her. But there are over 100 people who are still going to court, who are going, they are under a trial, who have never been supported by MK. Some of them don't have lawyers. Some of them, it's just a mess. But you just start to realize that what Zuma was fighting for with, in the ANC, he was just fighting for his own space, for his own proximity. That's why his kids during his tenure were extremely wealthy. So for me, it's MK for me will die a natural death. MK will die with Zuma, and we are going to see a brutal battle for the soul of MK. We're going to see, and ultimately, I think when JZ is no more, voices which are progressive, because there are people who are progressive, they'll be able to start emerging, they'll be able to start speaking. But of course, when Zuma is there, there's absolutely nothing that they can do. For now, they have no other opportunity but to, succumb and report to Zile.
So I've got a few questions now. Because the last I spoke to you, it was when they were taking in Floyd. And at the same time, incidentally, there was a fallout with you guys. So I want to understand why you walked away, what the fallout was about. And then also just to explore this concept of Ubaba, because I remember at that Floyd conference as well, it was so awkward for me watching grown men going like this. And I was just like, what the hell's going on? So do you think that South Africans, because of the absent father pandemic, especially in our generation, is this what it's coming from? Is that gap, that need for a father figure? Because why should our politics need a father figure?
I think that's one interesting perspective, but let me attempt to answer your question, the fallout. I think, look, at every step where I assisted MK, I was never anti-ANC, I must say this. Because for me, it did not make sense why the ANC would so easily suspend President Zuma when this man spent his entire life within the ANC. And at the same time, President Zuma always said, ANC is my home, I'm a member of the ANC. So at every given time, I would attempt to get an NEC member to meet an MK leader or to meet President Zuma so that, they could engage, because it did not make sense why you would have the need to have these two parties. So that did not happen, unfortunately, and President Zuma was eventually suspended. But now what happened was, so we worked, and MK, of course, got the 14+%. And we worked with limited resources, and I'm highly proud of myself. Even though some ANC members and leaders are very angry with me, they say that I'm part of the people who made the ANC to lose. But the ANC was going to lose in any case, because the ANC is not interested in its own self-preservation. And
people.
Oh, well, I differ. I differ a bit. I think many of us are products of the ANC. I mean, I see myself. I know where I come from. I know where my mother comes from. So when I look at myself and when I look at my mother and my niece and nephews, one of my nieces just graduated with an honors degree. She's doing her master's through NSFAS. The other one is doing an honors at University of Free State. And these are kids who were raised through social grants from birth, and now they're graduates. The unfortunate part is that they're also going to demand jobs from the ANC, which is another discussion altogether, because it also speaks to this savior type of mentality. The fact that the ANC has opened many doors for us. It continues to open many doors. There are many opportunities. The other challenge is that the ANC cannot articulate its achievements and successes because they are continuously
busy
in their own, internal struggles. Now they're going to 2027. It's going to get worse. But now, after elections, now I ask the SG of MK, who at the time was Atazwan. I asked him, have you developed a concept note on how you are going to deal with coalitions? Because it's quite clear that the ANC is going to need a coalition partner. And with my experience, having worked for the ANC, I know how, in fact, scenario planning, you plan ahead, but MK had nothing at the time. There was no document on how they were going to engage governance. Because I really think that even though we're saying 2/3, remember in the press statements we would say we are going to win with a 2/3 majority. I think there are some people who actually believe that they were going to get a 2/3 majority. That's why they were not prepared. But at the same time, I also knew that the people who were there, they were not mainly, in terms of elections. I mean, if you look at Babu Nhleko, he had been out of politics for a while. If you look at other people, they were not really entrenched with the dynamics of, elections and this now impending issue that now you have to go to parliament. What happens? You have to go to legislature. So they had no document whatsoever. So I request a meeting between myself and the SG and Ludali Belo, who's now working with Floyd Tshivambu, who was also, as I said, the convener of MK, because he's a lawyer, And of course, we've worked together. We used to write for Ntlamulo and other things. So now we have a sitting. When we have a sitting, we had a heated engagement, I can tell you now. And they even said that I'm a Gucci revolutionary. That's what they said to me. And I was quite clear. I said to them that the ANC has not won, not even a majority. The ANC is under 50%. They are going to need strategic partners to govern. MK contested elections. If you are now arguing that you are only going to negotiate with MK if they remove Ramaphosa, you must be joking. And I also had to remind them that when Jacob Zuma was president of the ANC, some of us, including them, we fought to ensure that the EFF in particular, Floyd Tshivambu in particular, does not remove President Zuma through a palace coup. So now you want to do the same thing that the EFF was doing by not allowing the ANC to choose whom should lead, the party. The ANC went to conference and they chose Ramaphosa, whether we like it or not. So now, when you go and negotiate, the first thing that you want to say is that Ramaphosa must be removed. You are a 14.5 party, but you are giving an ultimatum that the party with the majority of votes must remove its president so that it can take you into consideration. It did not make sense. So what you had men who were very boisterous, men who did not understand scenario planning, who did not even understand, politics or political strategies, and bargaining, because now, when you've got such an outcome, you obviously have to negotiate. They did not want to negotiate. That's why even when they went to meet IFP, I think it was in Durban or at the airport, they were late, So how I approached it And my background as an advisor, as a strategist, was that, look, you have an opportunity to go into government with the ANC. They totally refused. That's why every time MK criticizes the GNU, I call them bluff. Because when they had an opportunity to go into an alliance or a coalition with the ANC, they refused. And
do you think Zuma is just a man with a very big ego, and all this happening is just about a personality that is in torment about being kicked out of something they feel that they made, and now, you know, when you just create drama?
Yeah. No, I think, look, there's a lot of lies. I can tell you now that, of course, even if MK members were to know those things, they would not care because they are now cultish, you know. You know, when we were going to Mangaung conference in 2012, I was still a treasurer of my branch. And my branch in particular, we nominated Kgalema Motlanthe. And our deputy at the time was Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. A Johannesburg branch, we took a position because of Marikana, because President Zuma had, you know, ensured that Marikana, you know, goes away. We took a position, correctly or incorrectly. And towards Mangaung, President Zuma commissioned that the findings of what was then called the Danone Commission of 2006 be made public because Kgalema was contesting him. I'm not sure if you recall, around 2000 there was that scandal, the oil for food scandal, where Sandile Majali even committed suicide, where, you know, Kgalema Motlanthe, Tokyo Sekgwale, they were accused of stealing some money from Iraq. Of course, there were findings that found that Kgalema and Tokyo were not guilty. After Mbeki, commissioned Judge Danone at the time. So that thing was buried. And that's how Kgalema eventually supported, I believe. That's how he finally supported Zuma towards Polokwane, because Mbeki had used the Danone Commission, you know, to isolate him. Now, we have forgotten the Danone Commission. Comes Mangaung conference. All of a sudden, President Zuma, you know, digs out this commission of 2005, 2006 to deal with Kgalema Motlanthe. And unfortunately, that thing phased out. If you also recall, there was the issue of Julius and the Limpopo, you know, how Limpopo was captured. Of course, this idea of state capture does not start with Zuma. It started, you know, way before in his tenure. He wanted to use this idea of state capture in Limpopo by isolating Julius, who was supporting Kgalema. Anyone who was supporting Kgalema was isolated. And now you have President Zuma today, who then wants to tell us that he's a victim. This is politics. You know, this is politics, and politicians use different methods to isolate each other, you know, to get rid of each other. So I think, as I said, President Zuma, it's either he has got a short memory, it's either he lies, but what is quite evident is that, you know, this victimhood strategy has actually worked for him. That's why he can isolate himself and come out as the savior. Because there are many things that President Zuma won't tell people. And I can tell you, for example, the issue of Chrisani. There's always been this narrative to say that Chrisani is the one, or Thabo Mbeki is the one who killed Chrisani. Silently so. You would know, people would say, oh, it's Mbeki did not want Chrisani. And at times it would be Cyril Ramaphosa. But now there are minutes which are available on the O'Malley archives, NWC minutes of the ANC, NEC meeting minutes of the ANC, in one of these minutes, it's NWC, I think, 1991 NWC meeting. Ruth Mompati was there, September was there, and a few ANC leaders were. And I urge your viewers to actually go Google O'Malley Archives, NWC meeting, and then you can just speak on this issue that I'm going to speak to. In that meeting, Khesani asks President Zuma, because President Zuma and Thabo Mbeki at the time were part of a presidential task team that was appointed by Nelson Mandela, to deal with the issue of transition. Now, Khesani asks President Zuma, why are we seeing, articles from the media about discussions between yourselves and the Buddha Bond? He goes further to say, what are you discussing with FW de Klerk? Because your discussions are not coming, to the NEC. So, but interestingly, when JZ speaks to his members and he speaks to other people, he will say it's another person. I mean, who signed the Buddha Bond Accord? If you go through those minutes and other minutes, it's quite clear that there were people who were designated to deal with the Buddha Bond, with the FW de Klerk, but it was certainly not the ANC. It was not the entire leadership of the ANC which was privy to some of these discussions. That's why at some point, there's one video that Khesani made that, of course, yes, he was not comfortable with some of the discussions, but when the leadership takes a position, you follow. So for President Zuma to then posture himself, and in all the time that I've had an opportunity to speak or ask JZ questions, I've asked him these questions. I've asked him about this minute, and why he isolates himself from Thabo Mbeki, because you would know JZ and Thabo were very close. They were allies, to the extent that, I mean, in the first conference post-unbanning of the ANC in 1991, Thabo Mbeki and Zuma were in the same slate. The very reason that your Khesani, Joe Slovo, and Harry Gwala contested Mbeki and Zuma at the time, it's because they did not support their approach. And now also in 1994, that was 1991, 1994, just after the 1994 elections in December, the chairperson at the time of Southern Natal, who was Jeff Radebe, contested Jacob Zuma, who was in the same slate with Thabo Mbeki. So Thabo Mbeki became deputy president in 1994 because President Nelson Mandela was alive. Thabo Mbeki deputy president, and then Zuma the chairperson of the ANC. And he was contested by the very people who did not support him in 1991, people who were part of the street committees, people who were part of who had organized themselves, MK members and so forth, because they did not agree with the approach. And one is not necessarily saying that all these leaders were sellouts, but they took a decision, to compromise, to negotiate with these people. The issue here is President Zuma continuously isolating himself from the decisions that he was part of, the decisions that he took and he defended when other ANC leaders at the time, like Khesani, did not know. Now, to isolate himself and go around posturing himself as a person who defended Khesani, who told Khesani that he must not go out there or be very wary of some of the ANC leaders, it's very nefarious and vexatious. And for me, I have always hoped that what JZ can do is to at least impart correct knowledge about the ANC, because this man spent over 60 years of his life fighting for this organization. But I think the issue is not being able to take the good and the bad, not always wanting to come out as an angel or as a saint. And for me, I think that's my major concern with President Zuma, the fact that he sells his supporters' lies. And someone like me, who's always, I'm a researcher by profession, I've been part of big campaigns. I ensured that MK Party becomes one of the major opposition parties, but I've always been in the background. And at any given time when I'm asked to go and stand and fight, I mean, we did it at NN7. You know, I was a spokesperson when Mzwanele Manyi was president of PPF, where I was given the responsibility to be the spokesperson of PPF and go and defend Nkosazana, you know, on all different platforms. I agreed and I went there. When President Zuma was arrested, I think it was July 2021, Kalni House, Andile Lungisa called me to say, look, we are having a press conference. We want you to read the memorandum. And I said, send me the memorandum, made inputs, called in Tsepo Kadima, and said, Tsepo Kadima, look, I've just received a memorandum from Kalni House, Andile Lungisa, about the arrest of President Zuma. I need you to assist me from a constitutional perspective on what I would say. We made inputs with Tsepo Kadima. The next day, went on the international platform to defend President Zuma and to outline why his arrest was unjust. So,
which it was.
Of course, yes, it was, but he walked out of a quasi-court. And when I said at the time, he walked out of a quasi-court.
The commission, you're saying the commission is the quasi, but that's the same commission that Amakhowa said they're not going to come. So why is it a quasi-court?
Okay, that's a different matter altogether. Of course, yes, the judge at the time, or the presiding judge at the time, could have taken a decision. But President Zuma decided to go to a court to testify, and he walked out of that court. And it's not one of the, it's many instances where our leaders were misled, and I've said it previously. You do not walk out of, a court proceeding. You do not do that, even if you are a sitting president, even if you are a former president, even if you are a multi-billionaire, you do not do that.
But the rules seem not to work for Makhowa then. If we're going to respect it as a court, then it has to be the same for everybody.
Of course, as I said, President Zuma could have taken a decision to say that I'm not going to appear. He decided to go and appear. And it was not as if, of course, Gosbekir did not appear, but there were also white people who were implicated. It was not only the idea that President Zuma only worked with black people, or this thing, it's just, an attack on, black leaders. It's not true. There are other people, take, for example...
But don't you also need to be taken to jail? You need to be sentenced properly. You can't just take someone, no one can just come to your house and be like, Phapano, we don't like this about you, now you're going to jail. You actually got the right to...
Of course, yes. The overreach of Zondo, it was something else. I think, look, commissions are political in their nature. Marikana Commission was political. The Donon Commission was political. So commissions in their nature are political. And judges are not neutral. But the mistake President Zuma made was to go and appear in court and walk out. That's the mistake that he did. He just gave Zondo, an opportunity, to unduly use his powers, which was unfortunate. And this very Zondo was appointed by President Zuma. I think that's another thing. He appointed, my thinking, at the time when Zondo was appointed, he was not the most qualified.
But also remember there was the issue where he wanted Zondo to recuse him for that part, to recuse himself because of their personal relationship, because of conflict of interest.
Why did he appoint him if that is the case? So you appoint him for your own nefarious reasons? As and when the judge is there, you want him to recuse himself? There were many judges who could have been appointed. But President Zuma chose this particular judge, even Mlambo. He chose all these judges because he thought that this would be the judges who would be able to act in his favor. And that shows you one of the challenges of, cadre deployment, because Zondo was part of cadre deployment. He was deployed specifically by President Zuma because of proximity. Now, unfortunately, judges know that they are heavily, their positions or their, upward mobility, it's premised on a particular, the decision by a president, by the Minister of Justice. So it's quite evident that Zondo was going with the time. Zuma was no longer relevant. His friend Jacob Zuma was no longer relevant. But the reality is that, I have said this before, he was not supposed to walk out. He was supposed, and the other issue is, for all these years, President Zuma has always said ngizokhuluma. Don't you think that he had an opportunity to expose, people that he said were the ones who were corrupt? He had an opportunity, but he walked away. To this day, we do not know. People, even people who support President Zuma, or some of us who were sympathetic to him, we do not know what other people did. All he says is ngizokhuluma. At least Matela Koko, has spoken his truth on what happened at ESCO. Correctly or incorrectly again. But President Zuma has always accused people of being spies. He's always accused now he's accused Ramaphosa of being sent by, white monopoly capital. But he worked with Ramaphosa from 2010. So as and when it suits him, uzokhuluma. So for me, he had an opportunity to speak his truth. He will go to the grave, with his own truth. And people will continue to fight, attempting to understand what truly happened within the ANC. So for me, that's another major issue.
This white capital monopoly thing always gets me because, if you are in South Africa, you've got no choice but to work with white capital monopoly because they own the systems. Even as political commentators, you can see a trend of people twirling for white capital and white capital investment by speaking badly about black leaders. So what is going to be our answer? Because we don't have an economy, we don't have financial leverage and financial power for us not to depend on white capital monopoly. So you might know the truth and see what it is for it is, but when you get onto these platforms, then you have to speak in a way that white capital is going to like you and give you opportunities. What are your thoughts on?
No, thank you so much. I always say that white capital is well organized, well disciplined, and it always thinks ahead. You cannot blame capital for safeguarding its own interest. You cannot blame it. You really have to look at black leaders who attack white capital, but they've never done anything to set up structures or what I call organs of society. So white people are not, they are not entitled. They do not have to save us, if I might put it like that. It is our responsibility. And the reality is that those who've had an opportunity and have had access to millions and billions, when they had that opportunity or when they had the money, take, for example, President Zuma. When he was in charge, Khulubuso Zuma became a miner. What did he do? Miners died. I just want to make another example. There was that deal between Goldfields. I'm not sure if you still remember that deal, where President Zuma's white lawyer facilitated a deal where Dr. Mampela was everywhere crying out that they were forced, or a BEE, a black BEE grouping. I think it was called Invictus. Remember, it was led by Gayton McKenzie, and it was led by Gayton at the time. So that deal between Goldfields and Invictus and President Zuma's lawyer benefited, some ANC leaders. And some say that, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, I remember at some point even found, she did not find Baleka Mbete at the time guilty, I think 5 years ago. It was the Goldfields deal under JZ, under President Zuma. So I think I've been consistent on this. It's high time that we stop blaming white people for our own challenges and our own problems. There's a lot of money that goes towards black business, that goes to black people. But black people do not invest, in black projects. They do not invest in the African agenda, in the black agenda.
Like there's no black people supporting MOYA. There's so many rich black people, and here we have a black independent media house, but there's no queue
Yes.
of, and then if I get white investment, then I'm going to be known as a sellout, even though the blacks
Yes.
were not there.
Yeah, and remember, even with white people, if we are honest, there's a lot of white people who sacrificed their time and their life for the liberation of this country. There are many white families. Ruth First was killed. Ruth First, a Jewish white woman, was assassinated. Fighting for us, fighting for our generation. Fighting for the future, because she was not only fighting for herself. So as and when you get an opportunity, to get funding from white people, you must take it, because you've got an opportunity to build this brand, and you are well-meaning. You have people who'd rather give, or in terms of their succession plan, they would rather empower. Zuma has empowered her daughter. So we can't say that black people don't do. Yes, of course, they empower whom they want. They empower their children. So we cannot blame white people for the sins of our fathers. And in many instances, even women leaders, they of course also take care of their own families. So I think white people are doing quite well. I think white people are doing well for their communities. You were speaking about fatherlessness. More than 80% of white fathers are raising their kids. They are there. They are fathers. They are consistent fathers. So for us to continue white people for our own problems and for our own challenges, and for some of the things that we can do and we can resolve, I think for me it's a non-starter. I'm hoping that Usandile Zungu, Ubam Tembe, and others have just gotten $1 billion. How are they going to use, with their partners, how are they going to use those billions to improve the lives of black people beyond buying soccer clubs? For me, those are questions that we should ask. Tokyo Squale has made billions from ABSA, has made billions from other white companies. Saki Makozoma, Tutuzani Zuma, who's that? Kulubusu Zuma, and many others. What are they doing? We should start calling them to account. And there are many, they're not only 100. You've got a litany of black people who have made millions and billions from this ANC government. They're not giving back. So it's time that we stop blaming white people. White people, of course, in white capital will want to continue controlling the political trajectory of the country. Yes, because at the same time, it's quite clear they're also tired of giving black people money. They have given black people shares and money. Where has the money gone to? It's definitely not gone to the black community. It has not gone to starting industry. So for me, I think we should look at ourselves, as black people. We have failed ourselves. The defeated race narrative. Floyd, Julius, they've gotten a lot of money. What have they done?
Nothing.
Yes, to build industries.
Mansions. And
of course. So there is nothing, absolutely nothing. And I know that we do not have time.
And we don't. That's what I was stressed about. I was like,
yes, we do not have time. We've got a new party that is going to be led by Floyd.
That's where I wanted to go quickly, actually. So Floyd walks into MK, and then MK starts looking like, okay, it's a vehicle now. And then, so let's take it from there. Hey, you're going to have to
be quick.
Yes.
Be quick. I think Floyd did not understand the balance of forces. He thought he could just go in there, create structures, bring in his forces from the EFF, because of course he came with people from the EFF, and in the process,
and rightfully so.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right?
Yes, so he came in, but he did not understand that when he was coming in, there were people who had the position that he was in. It was a temporary position. You had people like Ntlamulo who had earmarked that position, and of course you had a litany of other people who had earmarked different positions within MK. So MK is a contested terrain. And I think, if Floyd had got in there, read the environment, understood that the organization is highly cultural, traditional, infested with nepotism, patriarchy, he could have taken, his time. But at the same time, he went into MK knowing that MK does not have any ideological posture. MK stands for everything and nothing at the same time. That's why President Zuma, after all these years, since the 70s of supporting South Sahara, that's why now he could go to Morocco. And as Floyd said, the probability of taking money from the king of Morocco, when all these years when he was in the ANC, he taught all of us who were in the ANC that until the people of South Sahara are liberated, South Africa cannot be free. But today, having an opportunity to take money, as you know, Floyd has alleged, from Morocco, and seeing MK releasing a statement in support of Morocco, it tells you that President Zuma stands for nothing.
Yep.
And it's
Not
quite
principled.
dangerous, yes. So, of course, if you know, you look at Zuma from a tribal perspective, because at the moment he's now mobilizing using the tribal Zulu narrative. Of course, if you look at any other thing and you avoid his ideological posture, you will see that President Zuma has misled many people, including some of us who supported him, who defended him on many issues. I will not be surprised that President Zuma will now support Israel. And of course, I'm not taking sides, you know, on the issue of Israel and Palestine, but I'm just saying, from an ideological posture that he has always taken, for me, I think it's
about the money.
It's about the money, of course. And you know, in fact, last year, I wrote to Mzwandile Messina. Last year, when Dudu Zile and MK attended the anniversary of Moroccan independence, I sent Mzwandile Messina a message to say that, look, the posture of the ANC of supporting South Sahara, as much as, you know, it's...
Western Sahara.
Yeah, Western Sahara, sorry. As much as it's very principled, however, the embassy is going to utilize the opposition, you know, to ensure that it gets support, including at the AU. Of course, Morocco has got a lot of money. They are influencing many countries in the continent, you know, to go against, you know, South Africa, to go against the ANC. It was not a coincidence that at the Pan-Africanist Parliament that Dumiseni lost. And it's because the ANC continues, it's very steadfast on its ideological posture. You know, it's not vacillating. And for someone like President Zuma to then go outside of the ANC and to then start, you know, taking decisions which go against what, as I said, he taught many of us, I think for me, just shows the type of person that Jacob Zuma is. And many people had told us that you are dealing, you know, with a character, you know, with, and I always say that we've created a monster. So yeah, Floyd knew what he was getting himself into. He knew that MK had no ideological posture. He knew that MK was a family organization. But I think because EFF, of course, he had his own challenges. He wanted EFF to work with the ANC. He could have gotten a ministerial position. And now the EFF, you know, it gets clobbered in the polls. Now you've got this new baby, MK Party. All of them, they flock to MK Party. Especially those who were saved by Julius. Yom Kwebani, Yom Zwanele, you know, because Julius took people who literally had nothing, the ANC, not even the ANC, but, you know, based on their own choices. And they were in the periphery. Julius, you know, took them in.
But Julius also needed them. It's not like there's this narrative. Because EFF didn't really have grown-ups and grown-ups with credibility. So Julius, as much as he had numbers, but he didn't really have quality of, you know. So having an advocate in Kwebane there kind of adds to the branding, and it adds to the branding of EFF.
Of course, they've left, and EFF is still there.
It's there, but
it's still there. And Julius, of course, has an opportunity to bring in, you know, new people. Kwebane is there. I'm not sure what she's doing in MK. She's there fighting with Mary Padi.
No, correction, Mary is fighting with Mkwebane.
No, can I be honest with you? I could not even, I do not have any sympathy for any of them because they are new political careerists.
Yes.
So I have no, yes. So all of them are fighting for political power. Yes. So now you have Floyd, and he went in there And you can't fight Dudu, you can't fight Ntlamola.
Yeah.
The list, the IEC list of MK is controlled by Dudu. The person who signs in the IEC is Dudu. So you want to come in and change all of those things. You want to control the monies. You want people to come and account for the millions that come in.
Imagine coming from absolutely no political background whatsoever, or having no reputation professionally, and then now you are in charge of all of this.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
No, but politics allows anyone. ANC for me is, I always say that it's a space for mediocrity to thrive. Now, Floyd has started his own party. And he knows that they are desperate.
Wait, you're jumping.
Yeah.
So Floyd gets in there and then he doesn't read the room, is what you're saying. So then what happens for him to be now pushed? What are the personality dynamics that would lead to that?
Oh, of course, I thought that, I would have addressed that. As I said, Floyd wanted to put structures in place. And he's not an angel, but he wanted to put... Part of the issue, remember the issue started with the 1-year anniversary of MK, where they were fighting for the money. That's where the issue started, when they were fighting for all the monies for the Moses Mabhida Stadium. And after that, remember the former TG, Dr. Mtanti, resigned. And then there's more money that is supposed to come in that is meant to go to what is called the Parliamentary Constitutional Office. That is money from the IEC and Parliament that's meant to come to MK. People want to eat the money that comes from the IEC and Parliament. That is the problem. Now you have Floyd, as I said, who's got measures in place, who wants accountability, and they are claiming that he is the one who ate the money, But at the heart of it, it's millions that comes from taxpayers' money. That is now contested because this money is meant to go to PCOs. What it means is that MK is meant to establish their own constitutional office across the country. So instead of establishing those constitutional office, people want to now have bogus constitutional office, and then no one wants to account for the money. So ultimately, the issue, one of the core issues with MK is the issue of the money. Yes, so that's one of the core issues that, unfortunately, Floyd wanted to, to assert his authority, and of course, he's got a position, but that position extends to Ntlamola, it extends to Dudu, and then there's the question of the money. And this is not an organization that has gone to conference. You meet where you meet in a corner, decisions are taken. So ultimately, that's the the key issue. And then he goes to, Malawi?
Oh yes. The scapegoat.
Oh yes, he gave them an opportunity to remove them because his removal was already in the pipeline. Yes, it was long, long time coming. I think Floyd should have done what Ubaba Nhleko is doing. Take a back seat, keep quiet, observe. Of course, you have a relationship with Zuma, but don't overstep. Do not shine the master. So I think that's what happened ultimately.
Professional jealousy.
Yes, because outshining the master is not Zuma. Outshining the master is outshining Duduzile, outshining Ntlamola. Yeah.
Sure, it's so fascinating. Okay, so then the way you're saying it, Ntlamola and Duduzile find a way to push him out.
Of course, yes.
Okay. And then, so your thoughts now on his moves after he gets pushed out?
I thought that he would take a break because he's been in politics for the better part of his life. But what else can Floyd do? Floyd has never worked in his life. There's absolutely nothing that he can do. And of course, the easiest way to make money is to exploit voting cows. There are many people who are waiting for a savior, so they know quite well that 2026 is around the corner. There's a possibility that they can get a municipality or one. If you get a municipality in Ziggy, If you get a councillorship, if you get an MMC position, you get to control a budget. Yes. So I am quite sure that the only thing that Floyd and Mayibuye will now be focusing on is getting some votes in some of these municipalities. So that's the main thing. And
so even if he aims for the bare minimum, he knows that even if he just gets the bare minimum, then he's still covered.
of course, yes. Why do you think? Take the city of Johannesburg. Take many of the municipalities. They're in disarray because you've got this collusion of people who are able to get. They have access to municipal resources, and through municipal resources, then you've got money to pay. For the party. So many political parties do not have funding. The best way to get funding is through municipalities. Okay, and of course, then you can have national elections. But that's how you make money. You raise or you fundraise through the budgets from the municipalities. That's why there's no service delivery in many municipalities. That's why even I've had many ANC members who've been saying that, look, local elections or local governance is the major problem, because from a policy perspective at national level, there's a lot that one can say the ANC is doing. But where the ANC is being failed, it's at a municipal and provincial level. So that's where the money gets to be eaten. So 2026 is around the corner. I'm not sure if people are going to go out and vote. People are tired of being used by political parties.
I don't vote anymore,
Yes. I did not vote as well, by the way. Yeah. People are just tired of, quasi-revolutionaries who come from nowhere. Gucci, LV.
To go and eat.
Yes, to go and eat. People are just tired.
Meal tickets.
Of course, yes. Because we work hard, Nziki. We work hard. We pay our taxes. We are double taxed in this country. And we do not have any return on investment on the money that we give to government.
Yeah.
We've got all these politicians who are making a lot of money. So people are just tired. People are heartful. And what I thought would happen with Mayibuye? I thought that there would be some sane civil society movement which would even take this matter to court. Because the issue of political parties, that are being formed on a daily basis by people who do not even have the record of having established an organization. Some of them, that's what I'm saying. Many people who are part of Mayibuye, they've never even established.
I saw that.
Yes.
I couldn't take it seriously because I was like, there's nobody there. I've never heard, no activists. Like, I'm just like, come on now.
Because politicians will promise you a job. Floyd Tshivambu, of course, will promise
positions.
No, besides positions. As and when he goes out there, he's going to speak about jobs, he's going to speak about unemployment. But he has never even started a spaza shop in his lifetime. How do you promise people jobs when you have never in your lifetime created any job for anyone? So you've got people who promise our people, because of course, the majority of South Africans, they are not job creators, they are job takers. So you've got these people who will then use words such as expropriation, nationalization. And they know that they cannot expropriate. Even Jacob Zuma, when he was president, he could not expropriate because it's not our money. That's unfortunate. That's the unfortunate thing. People come with their monies, they come and invest. You put your money here. So you would not want to put your money in a country where people can take your assets. And they know that, but they know that when you say Tunsiki or Papano, I'm going to expropriate or nationalize.
Bait.
Yes, I'm easily going to vacillate towards you. So these people will not create jobs for any person because they do not know how to create jobs. And but what is quite clear is that they will make a lot of money in the process. I'm sure that Floyd is just tired of being behind. He's just tired of not being able to be at the center where he makes decisions. So Mayibuye will give him that opportunity. But when he says Mayibuye, what exactly? Is it South Africa? Is it the continent?
And it's wild because, sorry to jump, I usually am so well behaved with guests, but this is such a hot topic. But Floyd, to opportunize Mayibuye, is deep because he's not known as a Pan-Africanist voice. He's never been Afrocentric. He's just, we know that scientifically he knows how to maneuver his
Marxist-Leninist.
Right? I know that he's a good
Fanonist.
strategist. But I've never seen him take a stand, an Africanist stand. Even the way he presents himself, you know. Because, I mean, you could be wearing dashikis, you could be dating soul sisters. Your makeup must show that you're Pan-Africanist to be able to say Mayibuye and power to the people. But if you're going to be like a black that white people have created, the type of black that
that went to meet Lord Renwick.
You know what I'm saying? And then you want to use
London.
the same...
In
it's
London.
just opportunistic.
Oh, of course, it's theatrics. Remember, politics is just theatrics.
Performance.
Yes. So Floyd knows that there are people like yourself.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
At least you know the EFF and you can, you've seen through them. But he knows that there are people who would fall for, oh, Mayibuye Africa, Izwele, you know. So, yeah, so
but that time you're wearing red bottoms. And,
of course, yes, it's a niche.
You know?
He needs a market. So in politics, you have to identify a market. And unfortunately, the likes of Floyd, they're boisterous enough to start political parties. Women in this country who have been isolated politically, who are used as tokens, have not taken a position where they go out there. Because you were saying, oh, why women are isolated? People are asking me, oh, Mere Party. Those are women who are prepared, to be tokens.
To be patriarchy princesses.
Of course.
Exactly.
Yes. But
to hold up the patriarchy. That's like EFF women.
Yes.
EFF women hold up the men.
Yes. Of course.
Yes.
So,
but when you're the type of woman who doesn't hold up men, that's what they do to us.
Of course,
but
yes.
Yeah,
you've got bipolar.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
I know. But let me tell you, I've always said this. I cannot stand mediocre for what it is. You can give me any position. I cannot stand mediocre. And that's what we are faced with in this country. And women who are a majority in this country continue to stand in the sideline, continue to be used as tokens. But they have not, I think women have not managed to identify how powerful they are. Yes. So they are still silenced, silenced, or they're very silent. But I think at some point, I don't know what Ms Phasha is going to do at MK. She's there in Parliament. Is she going to support Morocco? For me, those
deep.
Yeah, those are interesting aspects. But for me personally, I have no interest in politics whatsoever.
Yeah.
I've got, I'm at a point where I know that I have to make money. I have to teach young people how to make money.
Yeah.
I want to teach those graduates who go out and protest, those doctors who go and protest with their 7 to 8 year qualification, protesting for jobs. I want to help those graduates to teach them that no one is going to come and save you, that you have to be your own savior, that you have to go out there and create an opportunity for yourself. That's what I want to teach young people. So I'm in the process of self-actualizing. I'm in the process where I am attempting to develop myself, because I spent so many years, decades of course, in politics, supporting old men like Jacob Zuma. With all their scandals, but supporting them because you are thinking that, well,
for greater good.
Yes, it's for a greater good. Oh, and they're better evil. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Politics is not going to solve our problems.
Because even now, I'm being so bad. Sorry, let me listen.
No. Even now.
Bishop Zondo,
Floyd,
like full on up. Like when you're defending, and then you're just like.
But they supported Zuma in 2007.
That's why I'm like.
If you recall, so
there's no leader who would defend a case.
Okay, yes, of course, but it happened, in the ANC, and thank God for some of us who supported Thabo Mbeki, at the time. But all I'm saying is, for many of us, we have to open our eyes. Of course, government can only do as far, There is no government that is going to make you rich, that is going to pay for your lifestyle. Because that's another challenge that we are facing in this country. People are living beyond their means. Yeah. And many people are angry at the ANC because the ANC cannot sustain their lifestyle. So many of us, we need to go out there because there are opportunities galore. You know, let's go out there. Let's start our own companies. Let's support each other. You know, every time if there's an opportunity, I'll call you, hey, Nsiki, or I'll call people, oh, there's Nsiki, utilize Nsiki, or there's someone else. I do my best from
You're
that
very
perspective.
generous. It's
Yes.
true.
So for me, I can even go to Oppenheimer, if he's listening, to come and develop me as a black woman who is well-meaning, who wants to change her community. Because if you give us those millions, I can tell you now, we are going to develop so many people, so many young people, so many women, and all these young boys who are hopeless and helpless. So for me, that's where I am, Nsiki. I'm developing myself. I am open to, you know, people who want to work with me as a communicator, as a political strategist. But at the same time, I'm reading Napoleon Hill, you know, Think and Grow Rich. I'm reading a lot of work on how to grow myself as, you know, personally. Because many of us in Nsiki, me and you, we want to fight for other people. We want to save the world. But we have forgotten about ourselves. So that's where I am at the moment. I'm working on myself, you know, on my project, PHAPANO as a project. Then when I go there, I want to unleash myself as a change maker. That's where I am. But politics, all those people, they are, you know, political careerists. Tshivambu knows that he's going to exploit our people. So for me, I feel sorry for all the, you know, the voters who are going to give their vote to Floyd and some of these political parties. You know, you can just shout and people vote for you. So that's where I am at the moment.
Thank you, PHAPANO. I wish we had more time, but I'm sure we'll do this again as usual.
It's my pleasure, Nsiki, and thank you to the viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Queen.
All right, bye.
Umoya ulight, umoya upright. Yeah, I know, guys. We got you. We'll see you again next time. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And members, later.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into e off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.